Senate ask for that provision? Because the National Building Trades Union is saying that it's the equivalent of terminating more than 1,000 Keystone XL pipeline projects. Is that something that would concern him?
Caroline?
Shelby.
I just wanted to get a clarification on the Senator Rick Scott's amendment. It sounds like the president is agnostic about whether it's attached. Is that accurate?
Look, I'm not going to get into the details of the discussions that are ongoing right now, but the president wants these senators to come to a conclusion to get this bill back to the White House as soon as possible and make sure that it's a piece of legislation that can make its way back through the House as well. So obviously there's some ping-ponging between both sides of Capitol Hill right now, but that's why Senator Thune and Speaker Johnson are working with the president in lockstep every step of the way. In the back, News Nation, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. The president did
and then
announce.
in front of you, yes.
In front of.
Sure, I'll take both of you.
The president did announce last week that the trade deal with India is closed, and this could happen anytime soon. Are there any roadblocks as of now? Are there any updates on that? And how does the president see this about China's role or its influence in the Indo-Pacific region?
Sure, yes. The president said that last week, and it remains true. I actually just spoke to our Secretary of Commerce about it. He was in the Oval Office with the president. They are finalizing these agreements, and you'll hear from the president and his team, his trade team, very soon when it comes to India.
And on China, how do we counter China on that front?
Yes, I mean, look, India remains a very strategic ally in the Asia Pacific, and the president has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Modi, as you know, and he will continue to have that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. On the reconciliation bill, Senator Tillis from the floor yesterday seemed to suggest President Trump was getting bad counsel on the effects of the bill. Is President Trump aware of the analyses, and there are several of these, that suggest if rural hospitals potentially close, if there are Medicaid patients in the millions that become ineligible for that?
Yes, and that claim is just simply untrue. Rural hospitals comprise 7% of all hospital spending on Medicaid, and that illustrates that they have not benefited from the massive increase of waste, fraud, and abuse under the Biden administration. So this bill strengthens Medicaid. It will protect those benefits that hardworking Americans need, and that's why the president wants this bill to pass. The senator was wrong. The president put out a Truth Social post addressing it, and then the senator announced he's no longer running for office anymore. So I think that case has been closed, and the White House is continuing to focus on getting this legislation to the president's desk for his signature. Go ahead. Yes, you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, you and then you. There's confusion here.
A question on Syria.
Go ahead.
Has the Syrian government get back to you that they are ready to join the Abraham Accord? Is there any discussion with the Syrian and Israeli government for having a security agreement? Is the first question. And the second question, what's the end goal for talking with the Iranian? Is that only focused on the nuclear program, or are you willing to speak about other issues like the proxy groups and ballistic missiles, or even trade with Iran?
So as for discussions between Syria and Israel, you'll have to reach out to those respective governments. I can't comment on that. But what I can tell you is that this afternoon, the president will be signing an executive order to terminate the United States sanctions program on Syria. And this is in an effort to promote and support the country's path to stability and peace. The order will remove sanctions on Syria while maintaining sanctions on the former President Assad, his associates, human rights abusers, drug traffickers, persons linked to chemical weapons activities, ISIS and their affiliates, and Iranian proxies. And this is, again, an action that the president promised and shocked the world with in Saudi Arabia, because he's committed to supporting a Syria that is stable, unified, and at peace with itself and its neighbors. The president met with Syria's new president when we were in the Middle East, as you know, and so this is another promise made and promise kept by this president to promote peace and stability in the region. Go ahead, Caroline.
Questions on two topics, if you don't mind. I was with NTD here. First, on Canada. Canada says it's now dropping its digital services tax on American tech companies days after President Trump says he's halting all trade talks with Canada. First, what's the president's reaction to this? Can you tell us more about his call with Prime Minister Carney over the weekend? How did he get Carney to drop it? And also, what's the impact on American tech companies given this latest progress, as the president says he has been fighting for American tech companies?
It's very simple. Prime Minister Carney and caved to President Trump and the United States of America. And President Trump knows how to negotiate, and he knows that he is governing the best country and the best economy in this world, on this planet. And every country on the planet needs to have good trade relationships with the United States. And it was a mistake for Canada to vow to implement that tax that would have hurt our tech companies here in the United States. The president made his position quite clear to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister called the president last night to let the president know that he would be dropping that tax, which is a big victory for our tech companies and our American workers here at home.
And on Harvard, if you don't mind, the administration today formally accused Harvard of violating civil rights laws by not doing enough to fight anti-Semitism. We know that the president has talked to us before about Harvard potentially having a deal with the administration in the coming days. Do you have an updated timeline for that? How's the negotiations going? And is more pressure needed for Harvard to take fighting anti-Semitism seriously?
Well, there was quite a direct letter that was sent to Harvard this morning, as you know. The negotiations are taking place behind closed doors, so I won't comment on that. But what I will share with all of you, for those who haven't seen it, is the context of this letter, because I think it's very important. And this comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, which concluded after a thorough investigation that Harvard University is in a violent violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. And if you read some of the content of the investigation and what they found, the majority of Jewish students reportedly experienced negative bias or discrimination on their campus, while a quarter of Jewish students at Harvard felt physically unsafe. Jewish and Israeli students were assaulted and spit on. They hid their kippahs for fear of being harassed and concealed their Jewish identity from classmates for fear of ostracization. Images were widely circulated amongst the Harvard community that trafficked in obvious anti-Semitic tropes, including one that showed a dollar sign inside of a Star of David, and the campus was vandalized with anti-Semitic stickers, including one that showed the Israeli flag with a swastika. The Harvard campus was racked by demonstrations, as you all know, violent protests that violated the university's rules of conduct. The demonstrations called for genocide and murder, denied Jewish and Israeli students access to campus spaces. These are all facts that Harvard cannot dispute, and that's why the administration has found them in violation of Title VI and has threatened to withhold their federal funding, because if you break federal law, you should not be receiving federal tax dollars. And so I rest my case on Harvard. Andrea.
Yeah, so President Macron of France earlier today said that tariffs levied by powerful countries are often a form of blackmail, and criticized the sort of process that's underway. Didn't mention the United States specifically, but said that these tariffs are really hurting developing countries. So there's this big UN conference going on. What do you say to that? What is the president, was he aware of that comment, and did he have any response?
I think the president and the White House would certainly reject that characterization by Prime Minister Macron. Tariffs are an effective use of presidential power to bring back the middle class, to bring back our manufacturing industry, which was the backbone of our American economy and has been hollowed out by globalist politicians who have caved to foreign countries instead of doing what's right for American workers. That's why the president is effectively utilizing his authority to wage tariffs and to utilize tariffs, and continues to be in discussions and negotiations on trade to do what's right for America. And Europe and the rest of the world might not be used to that, but President Trump is back in town, and he's going to do what's right for our people and our country.
Can I just follow up on Netanyahu? So there's a report in Israeli media that the Prime Minister will actually be here, that Netanyahu will be here today meeting with the President. Can you confirm that?
I don't believe Prime Minister Netanyahu is here today. I think you guys would know about that by now.
Okay.
Unless there's something going on I don't know about, but I don't believe he is. I do know he has expressed interest in coming to Washington and meeting with the President, and we are working on a date for that. I do not believe it is today, but that would be fun. You never know in this White House, let's be honest. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Does the president support this new measure in the big, beautiful bill that would impose steep new taxes on new wind and solar projects?
I believe you're referring to the credits for wind and solar projects.
No,
and what
I'm talking about the new tax. There's a new tax that it's estimated would add 10 to 20% to the cost of any new wind and solar projects that start after this year?
Again, I don't want to comment on the specifics of provisions, but I'm sure the president will speak on that directly. Again, this is an ongoing process. The president continues to be very much engaged with the leadership in both the Senate and the House to get this bill back to his
Did
desk.
the president ask for that provision? Because the National Building Trades Union is saying that it's the equivalent of terminating more than 1,000 Keystone XL pipeline projects. Is that something that would concern him?
Well, the president spoke on this yesterday in his interview, and he said he understands that legislators want to protect jobs in their communities and in their districts. And so he understands why some of them are against this provision, but he also understands why people want the provision. So again, this is an ongoing deliberation and discussion, and the president is engaged in this very much. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. We've been hearing from White House officials for weeks that you're close on trade deals with a number of countries. Can we get any update on which countries will have deals by the 9th and when there may be any announcements?
I'll let the president and the trade team speak on it.
Can you respond to the CBO estimate that the Senate bill would increase the deficit by nearly $3.3 trillion?
This is one of the most fiscally conservative pieces of legislation that has ever made its way through Capitol Hill. There's $2 trillion in mandatory savings in this bill, and not only that, the projected growth that this bill will bring to our economy. It will be an economic boom. The Council of Economic Advisors has an analysis that shows that the bill will generate $4.1 trillion in economic growth, and it will cut taxes, putting more money back into the American people's pockets. That's why this president wants this bill to pass, and I know he's busy working the phones and doing what he needs to do today to make it happen. So we'll see you all later. Thank you. We'll see you